Cleaning services are for people who pay for them. You're going to clean what you dirtied with your mouth," hissed the woman with black hair, pointing to the stained seat. The bald man beside her chuckled and added, "That's how you learn not to act like a savage in a VIP theater." The four identical boys, only 4 years old, stared at the red velvet seat. One of them, his chin trembling and eyes glistening, leaned forward, the smell of butter in the air, humiliation burning in his chest. A few rows behind, the billionaire father watched in silence, his gaze fixed on his sons. He wasn't just the owner of the cinema, he was a father who had just witnessed his children being humiliated by customers. What the cruel couple didn't know was that their petty lesson was about to cost them far more than they could ever imagine, and that the quiet man in the shadows was about to make sure they would never humiliate anyone in his theater again. But before we see how the billionaire makes them regret their actions, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now hit that subscribe button and let's dive into the full story. "Daddy, can the heroes fly in real life too?" asked Malcolm Thompson, the smallest of the four identical boys, sitting in the front row of the VIP section. "Only in the movies, little one," replied Ms. Pamela Jenkins, the nanny who sat beside the 4-year-old quadruplets at the Premier Palace Cinema in downtown Los Angeles. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in June, and the Thompson family was enjoying their weekly movie outing. Marcus, Michael, Matthew, and Malcolm sat in a perfect row, each dressed in matching blue sweaters and khaki pants. Their little legs dangled from the plush velvet seats as they stared wide-eyed at the giant screen where superheroes soared through the sky. Several rows behind them sat their father, Darius Thompson, a tall man with broad shoulders and kind eyes. He watched his sons with a gentle smile, their excitement more entertaining to him than the movie itself. Though few in the theater knew it, Darius actually owned not just this cinema but the entire Premier Palace chain with 67 locations across the country. The 38-year-old billionaire preferred to keep a low profile, especially during these precious family moments. "Look! He's going to save everyone!" shouted Michael, pointing at the screen as the caped hero dove toward a burning building. "Shh, not so loud," Ms. Jenkins reminded him gently. "Remember our inside voices." Darius chuckled quietly. These Saturday movie trips had become sacred after his wife Jennifer passed away from cancer 2 years ago. Though incredibly wealthy, Darius was determined to raise his sons with the same values of humility and kindness that had guided him since his own childhood in a poor Chicago neighborhood. As the movie reached its most exciting part, with explosions and dramatic music filling the theater, Malcolm jumped in his seat. His small hand knocked over his popcorn container, spilling buttery kernels all over the empty velvet seat beside him. "Oh no," Malcolm whispered, his bottom lip beginning to tremble as he looked at the mess. "It's okay, sweetheart," Ms. Jenkins whispered, not noticing the spill right away as she was helping Matthew adjust his glasses. "Accidents happen." Behind the children, a woman with highlighted brown hair and designer clothes glanced at her boyfriend with an irritated expression. Elena Morales, 30 years old and always impeccably dressed, nudged Steve Johnson, a muscular 40-year-old man with a closely trimmed beard. "Did you see that?" Elena whispered harshly. "Those kids have no discipline." Steve frowned at the scattered popcorn. "Spoiled brats. Bet they think someone else will clean up their mess." The movie continued for another 30 minutes before reaching its happy ending. As the lights slowly brightened in the theater, people began gathering their belongings and heading toward the exits. "Did you boys enjoy the movie?" Ms. Jenkins asked, helping Matthew zip up his jacket. "The blue hero was the best," Marcus declared. "No, the red one was stronger," argued Michael. While the brothers debated their favorite characters and Ms. Jenkins was distracted, Elena stood up and stepped forward, pointing at the spilled popcorn. "Look at what you did, you little brat!" she snapped, glaring down at Malcolm. "Who do you think will clean this up?" Malcolm froze, his big brown eyes growing wide with surprise and fear. The other three boys stopped talking immediately, turning to stare at the angry woman. "Excuse me, Miss," Jenkins said, finally noticing what was happening as she turned around. "He's just a child, and it was an accident." Steve stepped forward to stand beside Elena, towering over the children. "Kids need to learn responsibility. Someone has to clean that mess up." From his seat, Darius watched the scene unfold. His hands gripped the armrests tightly as memories from his own childhood flashed through his mind, times when he'd been humiliated by adults who thought their status gave them the right to be cruel. Robert Williams, the theater manager, noticed the rising tension and walked over hesitantly. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his eyes darting nervously between the angry couple and the children. "No, it's not," Steve answered before Ms. Jenkins could speak. "These undisciplined children made a mess, and they need to learn accountability." Other moviegoers began to notice the confrontation. An elderly couple nearby shook their heads disapprovingly at Elena and Steve. A teenage girl discreetly pulled out her phone and started recording. Troy Mason, a security guard, watched from near the entrance, waiting for a signal from the manager. Malcolm's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the spilled popcorn. His brothers huddled closer together, confused and frightened by the adults' angry voices. "I'm sorry," Malcolm whispered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to." Ms. Jenkins put a protective arm around Malcolm's shoulders. "That's enough. They're just children." Steve stepped closer, blocking Ms. Jenkins from moving the boys away. A cruel smile spread across his face as he pointed to the popcorn-covered seat. "Cleaning services are for people who pay for them," he said, looking directly at Malcolm. "You're going to clean what you dirtied with your mouth." Malcolm's lower lip trembled as the first tear rolled down his cheek. The other boys looked on in horror, and Ms. Jenkins gasped in shock. Darius's hand tightened around the armrest of his seat. He had seen enough. With controlled movements, he stood up and began walking toward the confrontation, his face calm, but his eyes intense with quiet anger. Malcolm stared at the popcorn scattered across the velvet seat as Steve towered over him. The little boy's shoulders trembled as more tears welled up in his eyes. "That's completely inappropriate," Ms. Jenkins said, stepping forward to shield Malcolm. "He's just a child!" Steve stretched his arm out, physically blocking the nanny from reaching Malcolm. His large frame created a barrier between Miss Jenkins and the 4-year-old boy. "Let the kid learn his lesson about respecting public property," Steve insisted, his voice growing louder. "Actions have consequences." Marcus, Michael, and Matthew huddled together, clinging to each other's sweaters. Their identical brown eyes were wide with fear as they watched their brother being cornered. "Please move your arm, Miss," Jenkins demanded, trying to maintain her composure. "I need to attend to my charge." Elena crossed her arms, standing firmly beside Steve. "Someone needs to teach these children how the real world works." Several Premier Palace employees near the concession stand noticed the commotion in the VIP section. They exchanged worried glances but hesitated to approach. A young usher whispered to her colleague, "Should we do something?" Her co-worker shrugged nervously. "Those are VIP customers. We should wait for Robert to handle it." From his seat, Darius Thompson watched the scene unfold. His jaw clenched as memories flooded back, painful moments from his childhood in Chicago's South Side, where he had faced similar humiliation before building his entertainment empire. As a boy, he had once dropped a carton of milk in a grocery store. The manager had made him clean it while saying cruel words as other customers watched. Darius had promised himself that if he ever had children, he would protect them from such treatment. Malcolm's small shoulders continued to shake as he looked at the spilled popcorn. His brothers watched helplessly, too scared to move or speak. Robert Williams, the theater manager, finally approached the group. His steps were tentative, and he cleared his throat before speaking. "Is everything all right here?" Robert asked, his voice lacking authority. Steve turned to face him. "No, it's not." These undisciplined children made a mess, and they need to learn accountability." "I understand your concern, sir," Robert replied, his eyes darting between Steve and the frightened children. "But I'm sure we can resolve this without—" "Without what?" Elena interrupted. "Without teaching them consequences? That's why kids today have no respect." Around them, other moviegoers began taking notice of the confrontation. An elderly couple seated nearby shook their heads in disapproval. "That poor child," the elderly woman whispered to her husband. "Someone should help him." A few rows back, a teenage girl held up her phone, recording the incident discreetly. She tapped her friend's shoulder and pointed at the scene unfolding in the VIP section. Near the theater entrance, security guard Troy Mason stepped forward slightly, his hand moving to his radio. He watched the situation carefully, waiting for a signal from management to intervene. "Sir, I assure you we'll clean this up," Robert said to Steve, trying to defuse the situation. "There's no need to involve the children." "That's not the point," Steve insisted. "The boy made the mess. He should clean it." Malcolm's lip quivered as he took a small step toward the spilled popcorn. He felt everyone watching him, and fresh tears streamed down his cheeks. His brothers looked to Miss Jenkins for help, but she seemed powerless against Steve's intimidating presence. "Malcolm, sweetie, you don't have to do that," Ms. Jenkins said gently. "It was an accident." "Yes, he does," Steve countered. "Get down there, kid." Malcolm reluctantly leaned toward the spilled popcorn, his small body trembling with shame. A tear dropped from his cheek onto the floor as he began to crouch down. Darius Thompson had seen enough. He rose from his seat in one fluid motion, his face composed but his eyes intense with controlled anger. At 6 feet and 2 inches tall, with broad shoulders and an air of quiet authority, his presence immediately commanded attention as he walked toward the group. Theater employees who recognized him straightened their postures immediately. The young usher nudged her colleague, whispering urgently, "That's Mr. Thompson, the owner." Robert Williams noticed Darius approaching and immediately tensed. His eyes widened in recognition, and he straightened his tie nervously, realizing this situation could cost him his job. Ms. Jenkins looked relieved as she spotted Darius coming toward them. The quadruplets had not yet noticed their father's approach, as Malcolm was still staring tearfully at the floor while his brothers huddled together. Darius stopped a few steps away from the group. His voice was calm, but carried unmistakable authority when he spoke. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Elena turned with annoyance, not recognizing who was addressing her. "Yes, there's a problem. These children made a mess and need to clean it up properly." "With their mouths," Steve added proudly, completely unaware of who he was speaking to. Darius looked directly at Steve, his gaze steady. "And do you often ask children to clean with their mouths at establishments you visit?" Elena's expression faltered slightly at Darius's question. Something about the man's presence made her uncomfortable. "These kids need to learn," she began. "I'm curious," Darius interrupted, his voice still measured but firm. "What exactly do you think a 4-year-old child will learn from being humiliated in public?" Steve stepped forward, drawing himself up to his full height. "Look, buddy, this isn't your business. These kids—" "Actually," Darius said, "it is my business." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I'm Darius Thompson, owner of Premier Palace Cinemas and father of these 4 boys." The color drained from Elena's face as she processed what Darius had just said. Steve's mouth opened and closed without producing any words. The revelation sent whispers through the remaining audience members. "Mr. Thompson, I was just about to handle this situation," Robert quickly said, his voice nervous. "I'm so sorry for the inconvenience." Darius didn't acknowledge Robert's apology. Instead, he knelt down to Malcolm's eye level, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Are you okay, Malcolm?" he asked softly. Malcolm nodded slightly, wiping his tears with the back of his small hand. "I spilled the popcorn, Daddy. It was an accident." "I know, son," Darius reassured him. Accidents happen. He stood up again, turning to face Steve and Elena. His expression remained composed, but there was steel in his voice when he spoke. "Robert," he said, his eyes never leaving the couple, "please preserve the security footage from today and escort this couple to my office upstairs." Elena took a small step back. "Mr. Thompson, there's been a misunderstanding. Also," Darius continued as if she hadn't spoken, "please provide my sons with fresh popcorn and ice cream. The works." "Right away, sir," Robert replied, visibly relieved to have clear directions. The theater staff immediately jumped into action. 2 employees rushed to escort the Thompson children to the refreshment area, while Robert gestured nervously for Steve and Elena to follow him. "Sir, this is ridiculous," Steve protested. "We were just trying to teach the kid a lesson about responsibility." "Responsibility," Darius repeated slowly. "Yes, we'll discuss that in my office." He turned to face the couple fully. "After you." As Elena and Steve were led toward the elevator, Darius knelt again to speak with his sons. "Daddy, those people were mean," Marcus said, his eyes wide. "Are they in trouble now?" Michael asked. Darius smiled gently at his boys. "Don't worry about them. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind, but we never forget, right?" The quadruplets nodded in unison as Ms. Jenkins gathered them closer. "I'm sorry I couldn't stop them, Mr. Thompson," she said quietly. "You have nothing to apologize for, Ms. Jenkins," Darius assured her. "Please take the boys for their treats. I'll join you shortly." As Ms. Jenkins led the children toward the concession stand, Darius watched them for a moment before turning toward the elevator. His expression hardened momentarily before he took a deep breath and headed upstairs to his office, where Elena and Steve waited to learn what consequences awaited them. Darius Thompson rode the private elevator to the top floor of the Premier Palace Cinema. His mind focused on the confrontation ahead. The smooth wood panels inside the elevator reminded him of his late wife Jennifer, who had helped design all the theaters in the chain. When the doors opened, Darius stepped into a hallway with framed movie posters lining the walls. At the end of the corridor, Robert Williams stood nervously outside a door marked Executive Office. "They're inside, Mr. Thompson," Robert said, his voice shaking slightly. "I offered them water, but they declined." "Thank you, Robert," Darius replied. "Have you requested the security footage?" "Yes, sir. It's being prepared now." "Good. You may return to your duties downstairs." Robert nodded quickly and hurried toward the elevator, relieved to escape the tension. Darius paused for a moment, straightened his shoulders, and opened the door to his office. The large room featured floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the Hollywood Hills. Elena Morales and Steve Johnson sat on a black leather sofa, their earlier confidence completely evaporated. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" Darius asked calmly as he walked to his desk. Elena nodded stiffly. "Mr. Thompson, we had no idea those were your children." Darius held up his hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Would it have mattered if they weren't my children? Would that have made your behavior acceptable?" Steve shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "Look, we were just trying to teach them a lesson about—" "A lesson?" Darius interrupted, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel. "What lesson exactly were you trying to teach my 4-year-old son by demanding he clean up popcorn with his mouth?" Neither Elena nor Steve could maintain eye contact with him. Elena stared at her designer shoes while Steve examined his hands. "I'm curious," Darius continued, sitting down behind his desk. "Do you often approach children you don't know in public places and attempt to humiliate them?" "Of course not," Elena said quickly. "This was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Darius repeated slowly. "Please explain what I misunderstood about you calling my son a little brat and your boyfriend here demanding a child clean spilled popcorn with his mouth." Steve finally looked up. "We were having a bad day. The kid made a mess and we overreacted. It won't happen again." "You're right about that," Darius agreed. "It won't happen again, at least not in any of my theaters." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Sarah, could you come in, please?" Moments later, a woman in her early 40s with short black hair entered the office carrying a tablet. "Sarah Chen, my chief of operations." Darius introduced her. "Sarah, these are the individuals from the incident downstairs." Sarah nodded curtly to Elena and Steve before turning to Darius. "The security footage has been saved as you requested, sir." "Thank you. Please show it to our guests." Sarah tapped her tablet, and the large screen on the wall came to life. The footage clearly showed Malcolm accidentally spilling his popcorn during the exciting movie scene, then Elena and Steve's confrontation afterward. With the audio enhanced, their harsh words to the child sounded even more cruel. Elena's face flushed with shame as she watched herself point angrily at Malcolm. Steve's demand that the boy clean with his mouth echoed loudly in the quiet office. When the footage ended, the room fell silent. "What do you see?" Darius asked simply. Elena spoke first. I see us behaving terribly to a child over an accident." Steve crossed his arms defensively. "Those are some spoiled-looking kids." Matching outfits, VIP section, clearly used to getting whatever they want. Darius's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. "My sons were born 2 months after I opened my first theater in Chicago. I had just enough money to pay the hospital bills. Their mother and I worked 20-hour days to build this company while raising 4 babies. They wear matching clothes because it helps their nanny keep track of them in public." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "I grew up in a neighborhood where I often went to bed hungry. I know what it means to be judged based on assumptions." He turned to face them again. "My wife Jennifer died of cancer 2 years ago. These movie outings are special for my boys. Today you tainted that experience for them, especially for Malcolm." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Thompson." Steve remained silent, his jaw clenched tightly. Sarah cleared her throat. "Sir, should I proceed with the ban?" Darius nodded. "Yes. Please add Ms. Morales and Mr. Johnson to the banned persons list for all 67 Premier Palace locations nationwide." Steve stood up suddenly. "That's ridiculous. You can't ban us from every theater in your chain over one incident." "I can," Darius replied calmly, "and I have." "We'll see about that," Steve threatened. "I have friends in the media who would love to hear how the great Darius Thompson uses his power to bully ordinary citizens." Darius didn't react to the threat. Instead, he walked around his desk and stood directly in front of Steve. "Let me be clear," he said quietly. "This isn't about my power or your humiliation. This is about teaching my sons that actions have consequences, a lesson you claim to value downstairs." He turned to Sarah. "There's more. I want to establish a new company-wide anti-bullying initiative named after my sons." Sarah began typing notes on her tablet. "What specifically are you envisioning, sir?" "I want all 67 theaters to become designated bully-free zones. Staff training should include conflict resolution and protecting vulnerable patrons. And I want community programs for families." Elena looked up in surprise. "That's actually a good idea." "Your behavior today will serve as an example in our staff training," Darius told them. "Not as a model to follow, but as a reminder of how easily power can be abused, even over something as trivial as spilled popcorn." Steve snorted. "So you're going to use us as the villains in your corporate training videos?" "Perfect." "No," Darius replied. "Faces will be blurred. This isn't about shaming you publicly." He sat on the edge of his desk. "In fact, I'm offering you both an opportunity for redemption." "What kind of opportunity?" Elena asked cautiously. "The Thompson Foundation supports Sunshine House, a shelter for children from troubled homes. They always need volunteers. 4 hours a week for 3 months." Steve laughed harshly. "Community service? For what crime exactly?" "It's not a punishment," Darius explained. "It's a chance to understand what true accountability means. Growth, not humiliation. Elena nodded slowly. I'll do it. Steve glared at her. You can't be serious. I am, she replied. We were wrong, Steve. Sarah handed them each a business card. This has the Sunshine House contact information. They'll be expecting your call by Friday. Darius stood up. Our meeting is concluded. Robert will escort you out through the staff entrance. As if on cue, Robert opened the office door. Elena and Steve walked toward the exit in silence. At the doorway, Elena paused and turned back. Mr. Thompson, please tell Malcolm I'm sorry. Darius nodded once, acknowledging her words. After they left, Sarah turned to Darius. That was very gracious of you. Not many would offer redemption instead of retribution. It's not just for them, Darius replied. It's for my boys. I want them to see that standing up for yourself doesn't mean destroying others. He checked his watch. I should join them downstairs. They're probably wondering where I am. In the private VIP lounge, the four Thompson boys sat at a round table covered with ice cream sundaes and fresh popcorn. Ms. Jenkins was helping Malcolm wipe chocolate from his cheeks when Darius entered. Daddy! The boys called out in unison, their faces lighting up. Darius sat down between Malcolm and Marcus. Are these ice cream sundaes good? The boys nodded enthusiastically, their earlier distress seemingly forgotten. But Darius noticed that Malcolm was quieter than usual, his eyes occasionally darting toward the door. Malcolm, Darius said gently, those people who were mean to you are gone now. They won't bother you again. Why were they so angry about the popcorn? Malcolm asked in a small voice. I didn't mean to spill it. Darius put his arm around his son's small shoulders. Sometimes people forget to be kind. But we never have to forget, right? Malcolm nodded slowly, leaning against his father's side. I'll try to be more careful with my popcorn next time. Accidents happen, Darius assured him. That's part of life. As the boys finished their treats, Darius watched them with a mixture of love and concern. The incident had been resolved, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it had affected Malcolm more deeply than the child was showing. For now, though, seeing his son smile again was enough. The Thompson family arrived home just as the sun began to set. Their large house in the Beverly Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles had floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed with warm light. Inside, the walls featured framed photos of the family, including many of Jennifer, the boy's mother. After dinner, the quadruplets played in their spacious bedroom while Darius made phone calls in his home office. Miss Jenkins helped the boys prepare for bed, laying out 4 sets of matching blue pajamas. Time for your bath, boys, she called cheerfully. Marcus, Michael, and Matthew raced to the bathroom, giggling as they went. Malcolm, however, remained sitting on the floor with his stuffed bear. Malcolm, sweetie, it's bath time, Ms. Jenkins said gently. Malcolm shook his head. I don't want a bath tonight. But you love bath time. Don't you want to play with the boat toys? No, Malcolm said quietly, hugging his bear tighter. Miss Jenkins knelt beside him. Are you feeling okay, Malcolm? The mean people might come back, he whispered. Oh, honey, Ms. Jenkins said, her heart breaking a little. Those people can't come here. This is your home, and you're safe. Malcolm didn't look convinced. They were mad about the popcorn. What if I spill something else? Before Ms. Jenkins could respond, Darius appeared in the doorway, having overheard the conversation. Hey, buddy, he said, sitting on the floor next to his son. Are you still thinking about what happened at the movie theater? Malcolm nodded, his eyes downcast. Those people were wrong to speak to you that way, Darius explained. Everyone makes mistakes and has accidents. That's part of being human. But they were really angry, Malcolm said. Darius gently lifted Malcolm's chin. Their anger wasn't about the popcorn. Some people forget how to be kind sometimes. Will I forget how to be kind when I grow up? Darius smiled. Not if you practice kindness every day, just like you practice tying your shoes. This seemed to satisfy Malcolm for the moment. He allowed Miss Jenkins to lead him to the bathroom to join his brothers. Darius watched them go, concern etched on his face. Later that night, after the boys were asleep, Darius called Sarah Chen. "Sarah, I need you to find the best child psychologist in Los Angeles. My son Malcolm seems more affected by today's incident than I initially thought." "I'll get you some names first thing tomorrow morning," Sarah promised. "How is he doing?" "He's afraid those people might come back if he makes another mistake." Darius sighed. "A 4-year-old shouldn't have to worry about that." "This is exactly why the Thompson Kindness Initiative is so important," Sarah said. "I've already drafted the initial proposal for the program." "Good. Let's meet tomorrow to discuss the details." The next day, at the Sunshine House Children's Shelter in downtown Los Angeles, Elena Morales arrived for her first volunteer session. The building was old but well-maintained, with colorful murals painted on the exterior walls. Inside, children of various ages played in a large common room. The director, a woman in her 50s named Barbara Wilson, greeted Elena at the reception desk. "Welcome to Sunshine House," Barbara said warmly. "Thank you for volunteering with us." Elena smiled nervously. "Thank you for having me. I've never done anything like this before." "That's okay. We'll start you with something simple," Barbara explained, leading Elena through the facility. "Today you can help with our reading program. Many of our children need someone to read to them or listen as they practice reading aloud." Elena nodded, following Barbara to a small library corner where several children sat with books. "This is Zoe," Barbara said, introducing Elena to a shy 6-year-old girl with braided hair. "Zoe loves stories but gets nervous reading to groups." Elena sat down next to Zoe. "Hi Zoe, my name is Elena. Would you like to read together?" Zoe nodded silently, handing Elena a picture book about a lost puppy finding his way home. As Elena began reading with Zoe, Steve Johnson arrived at Sunshine House. His face showed clear annoyance as he checked in with Barbara. "Mr. Johnson," Barbara greeted him, "we have you scheduled to help organize our supply room today." "Fine," Steve said shortly. "Just show me where it is so I can get this over with." Barbara led Steve to a cluttered storage room filled with boxes of donated clothes, toys, and school supplies. "These need to be sorted by type and size," she explained. "The children rely on these donations." Steve looked at the mess and sighed heavily. "This is ridiculous. I'm a marketing executive, not a warehouse worker." "Everyone starts somewhere," Barbara replied calmly. "The sorting chart is on the wall if you need guidance." Back at Premier Palace headquarters, Darius sat in a conference room with Sarah Chen and his executive team. A large screen displayed the proposed logo for the Thompson Kindness Initiative. "The program has 3 main components," Sarah explained, pointing to her presentation. "First, staff training on conflict resolution and protecting vulnerable patrons. Second, designated bully-free zones in all 67 theaters. Third, community workshops for families." "What's the implementation timeline?" asked the chief financial officer. "We'll roll out the program in Los Angeles first, then expand nationwide over 6 months," Sarah replied. Darius nodded. "I want this to be more than just posters on walls. This needs to create real change in how people treat each other." "Speaking of change," Sarah said, "I've scheduled interviews with 3 child psychologists for tomorrow. All highly recommended for helping children process difficult experiences." Later that afternoon, at the Thompson house, Malcolm refused to go to the park with his brothers and Ms. Jenkins. "Everyone's going, Malcolm," Ms. Jenkins said gently. "It's a beautiful day." Malcolm shook his head firmly. "What if those mean people are there?" he asked, his voice trembling. Marcus placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'll protect you, Malcolm." "Me too," added Michael and Matthew in unison. "That's very kind of you, boys," Ms. Jenkins smiled. "But Malcolm can stay home with his father if he prefers." When Darius arrived home early from work, he found Malcolm sitting alone in the living room, drawing with colored pencils. "Hey, buddy," Darius said, sitting beside him. "I thought you'd be at the park with your brothers." "I didn't want to go," Malcolm replied, focused on his drawing. "What are you drawing there?" Malcolm showed him the picture. It featured large, scary-looking people towering over a small figure. The small figure had a blue sweater, just like the one Malcolm had worn to the theater. "Is that you?" Darius asked gently. Malcolm nodded. "And those are the mean people. They're really big and scary." Darius felt his heart sink. "The mean people can't hurt you, Malcolm. I won't let them." "But they're everywhere," Malcolm whispered. "They might be at the park or at school or at the store." Darius realized then how deeply the incident had affected his son. What seemed like a resolved situation to adults remained a significant fear for a 4-year-old child. The next day, Dr. Lisa Wright sat in the Thompson living room. She was a warm, friendly woman in her 40s with curly hair and glasses. Malcolm sat on the floor nearby, playing with his stuffed bear while Darius explained the situation. "The incident happened just 3 days ago," Darius concluded. "Now he's afraid to go to public places." Dr. Wright nodded. "That's not uncommon after a frightening experience. For children, their perception of danger can expand beyond the original situation." She moved to sit on the floor near Malcolm, maintaining a respectful distance. "Hello, Malcolm. I'm Dr. Lisa. That's a nice bear you have." Malcolm looked up cautiously. "His name is Brownie. He keeps me safe." "That's wonderful. Everyone needs a friend who helps them feel safe," Dr. Wright said. "Your dad tells me you didn't want to go to the park yesterday." Malcolm shook his head. "The mean people might be there." "That sounds scary," Dr. Wright acknowledged. "When I feel scared about something, it helps me to talk about it. Would you like to tell me about the mean people?" While Malcolm talked with Dr. Wright, Elena was finishing her second day at Sunshine House. She sat in the break room, feeling surprisingly fulfilled after helping children with their reading. Barbara entered with a smile. "You have a natural way with the children, Elena, especially with Zoe." "She reminds me of someone," Elena admitted. "A little boy I was unkind to recently." "We all make mistakes," Barbara said. "The important thing is learning from them." Elena nodded. "I never thought about how my words could affect a child so deeply." Zoe told me today that she gets scared when adults use loud voices. It made me realize what I must have sounded like at the theater. At the same moment, in the supply room, Steve was checking his watch repeatedly, counting down the minutes until he could leave. "This is a waste of my time," he muttered to himself. "All this over some spilled popcorn." Back at the Thompson house, Dr. Wright was speaking privately with Darius while Malcolm napped upstairs. "Malcolm is experiencing anxiety related to the confrontation," she explained. "He's processing it through his drawings and play. The way he draws those adults, much larger than normal, shows how threatening they felt to him." "Will he be okay?" Darius asked, his voice filled with concern. "With the right support, yes," Dr. Wright assured him. "I recommend a graduated exposure plan, helping him return to public places gradually, starting with quiet, controlled environments where he feels safe." She handed Darius a folder. "These are techniques you can use at home. We'll start with a small private movie screening with just your family. Then we'll progress to visiting during quiet hours with a few other patrons present." Darius nodded, grateful for the clear plan. "Thank you, Dr. Wright. I'll do whatever it takes to help him feel safe again." "One more thing," Dr. Wright added. "Children are resilient, but they need honest conversation about their feelings. Let Malcolm know it's okay to be scared sometimes, and that you'll be there to help him through it." As Dr. Wright left, Darius looked at Malcolm's drawing on the coffee table. He made a silent promise to his son and to himself that the Thompson Kindness Initiative would create spaces where no child would have to feel afraid like Malcolm did now. 1 week after the theater incident, Darius Thompson stepped into the large conference room at Premier Palace headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the polished mahogany table where 12 executives waited. The room fell silent as Darius entered with Sarah Chen at his side. "Good morning, everyone," Darius greeted, taking his place at the head of the table. "Thank you for rearranging your schedules for this special meeting." Sarah distributed folders to each person before connecting her tablet to the large screen on the wall. The Premier Palace logo faded away, replaced by the words Thompson Kindness Initiative in bold blue letters. "This is our new company-wide priority," Darius explained, his voice firm but passionate. "We're transforming all 67 theaters into designated bully-free zones." James Peterson, the chief financial officer, flipped through the proposal with a furrowed brow. "Darius, I understand this is important to you personally, but the implementation costs across all locations will be substantial." "I'm aware of the costs," Darius replied calmly, "and I'm prepared to allocate funds from my personal accounts if necessary." Sarah clicked to the next slide. The initiative has 3 main components. First, comprehensive staff training on conflict resolution and protecting vulnerable patrons. The screen showed images of employees in role-playing scenarios. Second, physical changes to our theaters with bully-free zone designations and positive messaging throughout public spaces. Another click showed mock-ups of theaters with new signage. Third, community programs for families, including monthly workshops on kindness and empathy. James leaned forward. "What's our expected return on this investment?" "Not everything is about financial returns, James," Darius said quietly. "But if you need numbers, consider this. Families choose where to spend their entertainment dollars based largely on how safe and welcome they feel." Sarah nodded. "Our research shows that 83% of parents would pay more for entertainment venues that actively promote positive social environments." Darius stood and walked to the screen. "We're not just selling movies. We're creating spaces where families feel valued and protected." To emphasize his point, Sarah played a short clip from the security footage of the incident involving Malcolm, with the faces blurred. "This will be part of our staff training," Darius explained, "a real example of how quickly a situation can escalate and how deeply it can affect a child." Across town at Sunshine House, Elena Morales sat in a small reading nook with 6-year-old Zoe. Sunlight filtered through colorful curtains as they finished reading a picture book together. "You read that page all by yourself," Elena praised, genuinely impressed. Zoe smiled shyly. "Will you come back tomorrow to read with me again?" "I will," Elena promised. "I volunteer here 3 times a week now." This was Elena's 4th visit to Sunshine House, and she was surprised by how much she enjoyed working with the children. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup seemed out of place here, but the children didn't care about her appearance. In the storage room down the hall, Steve Johnson checked his watch for the 5th time that hour. He had been sorting donated clothing for nearly 2 hours, and his patience was wearing thin. When Barbara Wilson entered to check on his progress, he barely concealed his frustration. "How much longer do I need to be here today?" he asked. Barbara reviewed her clipboard. "You're scheduled until 3 o'clock. That's another hour." Steve sighed dramatically. "This is ridiculous. I could be at work making actual money instead of folding used t-shirts." "The children need clean, organized clothing they can access easily," Barbara explained patiently. "Your work matters to them." "Let's be honest," Steve said, lowering his voice. "We both know I'm only here because Darius Thompson is forcing me to be. This is punishment, not volunteer work." Barbara's expression remained neutral. "Regardless of why you came initially, the question is what you'll do with the opportunity." When their shifts ended, Elena and Steve met outside the building. Elena's face was flushed with excitement as they walked toward the parking lot. "I helped Zoe read an entire book today," she told Steve. "Last week she was too shy to read more than a few words out loud." Steve rolled his eyes. "Spare me the heartwarming stories. I've been sorting disgusting old clothes for hours." "The clothes aren't disgusting, Steve," Elena objected. "They're donations that help children who have nothing." "Whatever," Steve muttered. "I can't believe you're actually enjoying this community service sentence." Elena stopped walking. It's not a sentence. It's a chance to do something good. Listen to yourself. Steve laughed harshly. You sound brainwashed. Last week, you were complaining about that kid spilling popcorn, and now you're Saint Elena of the children's shelter. I was wrong last week, Elena admitted quietly. Those children at the theater, they're not so different from the kids here. They deserve kindness, not cruelty. Steve stared at her in disbelief. Are you seriously defending Thompson now? After he banned us from every Premier Palace location and forced us into this humiliation? He could have done much worse, Elena pointed out. He could have pressed charges or publicly shamed us. Instead, he gave us a chance to learn and grow. Learn and grow? Steve repeated mockingly. You've been drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm out of here. As Steve stormed off toward his car, Elena felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time, she saw clearly how different their values truly were. At the Thompson home that evening, Malcolm sat on his bedroom floor drawing intently. His brothers played nearby with toy cars, occasionally inviting Malcolm to join them, but he remained focused on his artwork. Darius knocked gently on the open door. Dinner's almost ready, boys. Marcus, Michael, and Matthew raced past their father toward the stairs, but Malcolm stayed put. What are you drawing, Malcolm? Darius asked, sitting on the floor beside his son. Malcolm held up his paper. Unlike his previous drawings of giant, scary people, this one showed a small figure inside a house. That's me, Malcolm explained, pointing to the figure. I'm safe at home. That's really good, Darius said. Dr. Wright will be happy to see this new drawing tomorrow. Malcolm nodded seriously. Dr. Lisa said I could draw my feelings. Are you feeling safe right now? Darius asked. At home, yes, Malcolm answered, but not outside. The mean people might be at other places. Darius noticed that his son had drawn himself much smaller than normal, while the house around him was oversized, a sign that Malcolm still felt vulnerable but had found sanctuary at home. Dr. Lisa and I have a special plan, Darius explained gently. Tomorrow, after your session, we're going to have a private movie just for our family at the theater. No other people will be there. Malcolm looked uncertain. Will the mean people be there? Nobody, just us, Dr. Lisa and Miss Jenkins, and you can bring Brownie too, Darius assured him, referring to Malcolm's beloved stuffed bear. Malcolm considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, but I'll sit next to you. The next day, Dr. Lisa Wright observed Malcolm's interactions with his brothers during their session at the Thompson home. The four boys built a fort with pillows and blankets in the playroom while she took notes. Malcolm is showing signs of improvement in familiar environments, she told Darius afterward. Today's private screening will be an important first step in helping him feel comfortable in public spaces again. I've arranged everything, Darius confirmed. The theater will be completely empty except for our family and staff. Later that afternoon, the private screening began at the Beverly Hills Premier Palace. Malcolm clutched Brownie in one arm and held his father's hand with the other as they entered the empty theater. See, buddy? It's just us, Darius reassured him. Malcolm looked around cautiously. No mean people? No mean people, Darius confirmed. And look, fresh popcorn for everyone. Ms. Jenkins helped distribute small popcorn containers to each boy as they settled into the middle row. Dr. Wright sat a few seats away, observing discreetly as Malcolm gradually relaxed. By the time the animated movie began playing, Malcolm had stopped scanning the room for threats. Halfway through the film, he even laughed along with his brothers at a funny scene. As Darius watched his son's progress, Sarah Chen slipped into the seat beside him. I didn't mean to interrupt your family time, she whispered, but I wanted to let you know that the Los Angeles Times is interested in doing a feature on the Thompson Kindness Initiative. Darius nodded. Schedule a meeting with their reporter for next week. This initiative deserves attention, not because of my name, but because of what it stands for. At Sunshine House the following day, Elena sat in the break room reading the proposal for the part-time position Barbara had offered her. The role involved coordinating volunteer services and developing new programs for the children. Barbara entered with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Elena. "Have you had a chance to review the details?" "Yes," Elena replied. "It's a significant pay cut from my fashion industry job, but it might be worth it?" Barbara suggested when Elena paused. Elena nodded slowly. "I never expected to feel this way, but working here with the children, especially Zoe, it feels meaningful in a way my other job never did." Barbara smiled. "Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. 1 week ago, you arrived here as a reluctant volunteer. Now you're considering joining our team." Elena sipped her coffee thoughtfully. It's strange how one incident can change everything. "Speaking of change," Barbara said, "I received a call from Sarah Chen at Premier Palace this morning. They're launching a major anti-bullying initiative and want to partner with Sunshine House for some of their community programs." Elena felt a sudden mix of emotions: guilt over her behavior at the theater, respect for Darius Thompson's response, and hope that something positive could emerge from that unfortunate day. "I think that's wonderful," she said sincerely. As she drove home that evening, Elena made a decision. She would accept the position at Sunshine House and fully commit to this new path. She also knew she needed to write to Darius Thompson again, not to seek forgiveness for herself, but to offer something that might help his son heal. Elena sat at her kitchen table that evening, pen in hand and several crumpled papers scattered around her. After many attempts, she finally wrote a letter that felt sincere. "Dear Mr. Thompson, I've been volunteering at Sunshine House for the past 3 years, weeks, which has completely changed my perspective. Through working with these children, especially a shy little girl named Zoe, I've come to understand the impact my behavior had on your son Malcolm. I know you have no reason to trust my intentions, but I would like to apologize to Malcolm properly, not for my benefit, but for his. Dr. Wright might explain this better than I can, but sometimes hearing directly from the person who caused fear can help children process their emotions. I understand if you refuse. Whatever you decide, please know that I am truly sorry for my actions that day. Respectfully, Elena Morales." The next morning, Elena dropped the letter at the Premier Palace headquarters front desk before heading to Sunshine House for her first day as the new volunteer coordinator. 3 weeks had passed since the incident, and the Thompson Kindness Initiative was taking shape across Los Angeles. Darius visited the Santa Monica Premier Palace location early Tuesday morning to observe staff training firsthand. Employees gathered in the main theater, role-playing different scenarios with a professional conflict resolution trainer. "Remember," the trainer instructed, "your first priority is creating safety. Position yourself between the vulnerable person and the aggressor." Darius watched as 2 staff members demonstrated how to handle a teenager bullying a younger child. While their technique was correct, something felt off. "Stop there!" Darius called out, walking down the aisle toward them. "You're following the protocol perfectly, but it feels rehearsed." The regional manager, Karen Lewis, stepped forward nervously. "They've memorized all the procedures from the manual, Mr. Thompson." "That's the problem," Darius explained, turning to address the entire staff. "This isn't about following scripts. This is about creating a culture where every person feels valued and protected." He motioned for the role players to continue. "Try again, but this time forget the script. Speak from your heart about why bullying has no place in our theaters." The second attempt felt more authentic, with genuine emotion behind the words. Darius nodded with approval. "This is what I want to see in all our locations," he told Karen afterward. "This isn't just a policy change. It's a commitment to human dignity." At Sunshine House, Elena organized art supplies in the activity room. Today would be her first special session as the new volunteer coordinator. Children of various ages began filing in, including Zoe, who now smiled when she saw Elena. "Today we're going to draw our feelings," Elena explained to the group. "There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just put on paper what's in your heart." The children settled around tables with paper and colored pencils. Elena moved among them, offering encouragement. When she reached Zoe, she noticed something interesting in the girl's drawing. "Can you tell me about your picture?" Elena asked gently. Zoe pointed to a tiny figure in the corner. "That's me." Then she pointed to much larger figures surrounding the small one. "Those are grown-ups." Elena felt a strange tightness in her chest. The drawing reminded her of something Dr. Wright had shared during a planning meeting for the partnership between Sunshine House and the Thompson Kindness Initiative. Malcolm had drawn himself similarly, tiny compared to the mean people. As Elena considered this connection, the shelter's front door opened. Steve Johnson walked in, scanning the room until he spotted her. "Elena, we need to talk," he said loudly, ignoring the children's curious stares. Elena quickly led him to the hallway. "What are you doing here, Steve?" "I'm in the middle of a session." "I've been calling you for days," he complained. "Why aren't you returning my messages?" "I've been busy," Elena replied. "I've accepted a position here at Sunshine House." Steve laughed in disbelief. "You're joking, right? You're going to work at this dump instead of in fashion?" Elena's face hardened. "Don't call it that. These children deserve respect." "These kids are charity cases," Steve scoffed. "You're throwing away your career for what? To make yourself feel better about being mean to some rich kid?" The words hung in the air between them. Elena took a deep breath before responding. "It's over, Steve," she said firmly. "We don't share the same values. I don't want to see you anymore." Steve's face flushed with anger. "You're choosing these random kids over me? Over your whole life?" "I'm choosing a life with meaning," Elena replied. "Please leave now. The children don't need to hear this." As Steve stormed out, Elena returned to the art room, struggling to compose herself. She knelt beside Zoe, who was adding details to her drawing. "Are you okay?" Zoe asked, noticing Elena's expression. Elena smiled. "Yes, thank you for asking. Sometimes adults have disagreements too, just like kids do. My mom says when people are mean, it's because they're hurting inside," Zoe offered wisely. "Your mom is very smart," Elena replied, thinking about how much she had changed since that day at the theater. Across town, Dr. Wright worked with Darius on the next step of Malcolm's graduated exposure plan. After the successful private screening, they were ready to visit during quiet hours with a few other patrons present. "Malcolm did wonderfully at the private screening," Dr. Wright explained. "Now we'll increase the challenge slightly by having a few strangers present, but still in a controlled environment." "He seemed more relaxed afterward," Darius agreed, "but he still refuses to go to the park or other public places." "Healing takes time," Dr. Wright assured him. "Children process trauma differently than adults. The drawings are helping him express his feelings." That afternoon, Darius took Malcolm to the Westwood Premier Palace during its least busy hours. There were only about 10 other patrons scattered throughout the large theater. Malcolm clutched his father's hand tightly as they walked down the aisle. "Remember what Dr. Lisa said," Darius whispered. "If you feel scared, squeeze my hand 3 times and we can step outside." Malcolm nodded solemnly, his eyes scanning the theater for potential threats. They found seats in a quiet corner, and Darius placed Malcolm between himself and Miss Jenkins. The other 3 quadruplets sat nearby, excited for their second movie that week. As the lights dimmed, Malcolm's grip on Darius's hand remained tight. A few minutes into the movie, another child several rows ahead accidentally knocked over his soda. The noise made Malcolm jump. "Is he a mean person?" Malcolm whispered anxiously to his father. "No, buddy," Darius reassured him. "He just had an accident, like when you spilled your popcorn." See how his mom is helping him clean up? No one is angry. Malcolm watched the scene carefully. When the other mother simply helped her child without getting upset, something seemed to shift in his understanding. He gradually loosened his grip on Darius's hand. By the end of the movie, Malcolm was relaxed enough to laugh at the funny parts. It was progress, small but significant. Back at Sunshine House, Elena finished the art therapy session and hung the children's drawings on a special display board. She stepped back to admire their work when Barbara approached. "The session seems to have gone well," Barbara observed. "The children really opened up through their artwork." Elena nodded. "Art gives them a voice when words are difficult. I noticed something interesting in Zoe's drawing. She drew herself very small and adults as giants. It's exactly how Dr. Wright described Malcolm Thompson's drawings. Children who feel powerless often represent themselves that way," Barbara explained. "It's their perception of the world." Elena looked thoughtfully at the drawings. "I delivered a letter to Premier Palace today. I asked Mr. Thompson for permission to apologize to Malcolm properly." "That's a brave request," Barbara said. "Do you think he'll agree?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But after seeing these drawings, I understand better what Malcolm might be feeling. If there's any chance my apology could help him heal, I had to try." Later that evening, Darius sat in his home office reading Elena's letter. On his desk was Malcolm's latest drawing, still showing himself as small, but this time with his father standing beside him as protection. Dr. Wright had called earlier to discuss Malcolm's progress at the theater. "He's making good strides," she had told Darius. "But I'm concerned that he still sees the world as full of potential mean people. A properly structured therapeutic interaction with Elena could be beneficial, showing him that people who make mistakes can change and make amends." Darius picked up a framed photo of his late wife, Jennifer, holding the newborn quadruplets. Her gentle smile and kind eyes seemed to look back at him with wisdom. "What would you do, Jen?" he whispered. "Would you let someone who hurt our son back into his life, even with good intentions?" The decision weighed heavily on him. As a father, his instinct was to protect Malcolm from anyone who had caused him pain. But as a man who believed in redemption and second chances, he understood the potential healing power of Elena's request. The question remained: would facing Elena help Malcolm overcome his fears, or would it reopen wounds that had just begun to mend? After a sleepless night filled with consideration, Darius made his decision. He called Dr. Wright early the next morning to discuss Elena's request. "I've been thinking about Elena's letter," Darius said, sitting in his home office. "Do you truly believe meeting her could help Malcolm?" "In my professional opinion, yes," Dr. Wright replied, "but it needs to happen under controlled circumstances with proper preparation and support." "What exactly would that look like?" Darius asked, tapping his pen against the desk. "I suggest holding the meeting during one of Malcolm's therapy sessions at Sunshine House. It's a neutral location where Malcolm hasn't experienced trauma, and I'll be present the entire time." Darius considered this. "And what should Elena say?" "A simple, child-appropriate apology without excuses. The focus should be on acknowledging her behavior was wrong and that Malcolm did nothing to deserve it," Dr. Wright explained. "Children need closure just like adults. Right now, those mean people exist in Malcolm's mind as scary monsters who might appear anywhere." "I understand," Darius said finally. "Set it up, but with one condition. I'll be there too." Later that day, Darius sat on the edge of Malcolm's bed. The little boy was arranging his stuffed animals in a neat row, with Brownie the bear in the place of honor. "Malcolm, I need to talk to you about something important," Darius began gently. Malcolm looked up, his eyes curious. "What is it, Daddy?" "Do you remember the lady from the movie theater? The one who was unkind to you about the popcorn?" Malcolm's expression immediately changed. He hugged Brownie close to his chest and nodded silently. "She wrote me a letter," Darius continued carefully. "She wants to say sorry to you for being mean that day. Would you be willing to listen to her?" Malcolm looked down at his bear. "Will she be mad at me again?" "No, buddy. She knows she was wrong and she feels very sorry about how she acted." Darius moved closer to his son. "Dr. Lisa would be there the whole time, and so would I. But it's completely your choice. You don't have to if you don't want to." Malcolm was quiet for a long moment. "Will it be at the movie theater?" No, it would be at Sunshine House, where Dr. Lisa sometimes works with other children. It's a nice, safe place. Malcolm whispered something to Brownie, then looked up at his father. Brownie says we can try. Darius smiled gently. That's very brave of both of you. 2 days later, the Thompson family arrived at Sunshine House. The colorful building with its painted murals looked welcoming in the morning sunlight. Marcus, Michael, and Matthew were excited about visiting somewhere new. Will there be other kids to play with? Michael asked as they walked toward the entrance. Yes, Darius replied. Ms. Jenkins will take you 3 to the playroom while Malcolm has his special meeting. Inside, Barbara Wilson greeted them warmly. Welcome to Sunshine House, Mr. Thompson. The children are excited to meet your boys. Ms. Jenkins led the 3 excited quadruplets toward the sounds of children playing, while Dr. Wright met Darius and Malcolm in the hallway. How are you feeling today, Malcolm? Dr. Wright asked kindly. Malcolm held Brownie tightly against his chest. A little scared. That's perfectly normal, Dr. Wright assured him. Being scared sometimes is part of being brave. She led them to a small, cheerful room with comfortable furniture and toys. Soft music played in the background, and sunlight streamed through windows with colorful curtains. We'll sit here and wait for Elena, Dr. Wright explained. Remember what we practiced yesterday? You can stay right next to your dad and you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Malcolm nodded, settling into a chair next to Darius, who gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Down the hall, Elena waited nervously in Barbara's office. She had dressed simply today, jeans and a plain blue sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore minimal makeup. She's here, Barbara said, returning from checking on the Thompson family. Are you ready? Elena took a deep breath. I've been practicing what to say, but I'm still nervous. Just speak from your heart, Barbara advised. Children can tell when adults are being honest. Elena nodded and followed Barbara to the meeting room. When she entered, she immediately saw Malcolm partially hiding behind his stuffed bear. Darius sat protectively beside him, and Dr. Wright occupied a chair nearby. Hello? Elena said softly, sitting in the chair Dr. Wright indicated, close enough to talk but not so close as to intimidate Malcolm. Malcolm, Dr. Wright said gently, this is Elena. She wanted to talk to you today. Elena looked directly at Malcolm, keeping her voice soft and kind. Hi, Malcolm. I'm Elena. I was very mean to you at the movie theater, and I was wrong. Everyone makes mistakes, but it's important to say sorry when we hurt someone. I'm very sorry I scared you and made you feel bad. Malcolm listened quietly from behind his bear, his eyes wide and watchful. Dr. Wright had explained to Elena that he might not respond immediately, and that was okay. What happened that day wasn't your fault, Elena continued sincerely. Spilling popcorn was just an accident, and I shouldn't have been angry about it. When Elena finished speaking, the room was quiet. Dr. Wright leaned forward slightly. Malcolm, do you have any questions for Elena? She asked. It's okay if you do, and it's also okay if you don't. Malcolm looked at his father, who nodded encouragingly. After a long pause, Malcolm lowered Brownie just enough to see Elena better. Why were you so angry about the popcorn? He asked in a small but clear voice. The directness of his question caught Elena by surprise. She had prepared for many possible reactions, but not this simple, honest inquiry that went straight to the heart of the matter. That's a really good question, Elena said after collecting her thoughts. I was having a bad day, but that's not a good reason. The popcorn didn't matter at all. I was wrong to be mean about it. Sometimes grown-ups forget to be kind, and that's what happened to me that day. Malcolm seemed to consider her words carefully. My daddy says everyone makes mistakes. Your daddy is right, Elena agreed, glancing at Darius with genuine respect. The important part is learning from our mistakes and trying to do better next time. Malcolm nodded slowly, then whispered something to his bear. A tiny smile appeared on his face. Brownie says thank you for saying sorry. Thank you for listening, Malcolm, Elena replied. feeling a wave of emotion she hadn't expected. "And thank you too, Brownie." Dr. Wright smiled approvingly. "I think this has been a very good conversation. Malcolm, how are you feeling now?" "Better," Malcolm said simply. After the meeting concluded, Elena thanked Darius for allowing her to apologize to his son. "I didn't do it for you," Darius said quietly as they stepped into the hallway. "I did it for Malcolm." "I understand," Elena replied sincerely. "And I appreciate it all the same." While Malcolm rejoined his brothers in the playroom, Darius spoke briefly with Barbara about the partnership between Premier Palace and Sunshine House. "The Thompson Kindness Initiative is gaining momentum," Darius explained. "Sarah Chen tells me that early implementation in Los Angeles theaters has been well received by patrons." "We're excited about the partnership," Barbara replied. "Elena has been developing some wonderful programs that could complement your initiative." At the mention of Elena's name, Darius raised an eyebrow. "She works here now?" "Yes, as our volunteer coordinator. She's shown remarkable dedication," Barbara confirmed. "The children adore her, especially little Zoe, who reminds me a bit of Malcolm, sensitive and thoughtful." Meanwhile, at Premier Palace headquarters, Sarah Chen reviewed media inquiries with her team. The pile of requests had grown substantially over the past week. "The Los Angeles Times wants to schedule that interview as soon as possible," her assistant reported. "And now, Good Morning America and 3 local stations have requested coverage as well." "People are noticing what we're doing," Sarah noted. "The anti-bullying message is resonating." "Should we prioritize any particular outlet?" the assistant asked. "Let's start with the LA Times. Mr. Thompson agreed to that interview last week," Sarah decided. "But make it clear that the focus should be on the initiative itself, not on personal details about the Thompson family." That evening, Malcolm sat on his bedroom floor with his brothers, playing with toy cars. Darius observed from the doorway, noticing that Malcolm seemed more relaxed than he had in weeks. "Time for bed, boys," Darius announced. "Brush your teeth and put on your pajamas." As the quadruplets prepared for bed, Darius helped Malcolm change into his blue pajamas. "How are you feeling after today, Malcolm?" he asked gently. Malcolm thought for a moment. "The lady, Elena, she wasn't scary today." "No, she wasn't," Darius agreed. "People can change." "She was just a regular person," Malcolm continued. "Not a monster like in my dreams." Darius felt a wave of relief hearing these words. It was exactly what Dr. Wright had hoped would happen. Malcolm was beginning to see that the mean people were just humans who had made poor choices, not monsters who might appear anywhere. As Darius tucked Malcolm into bed, the little boy looked up with serious eyes. "Daddy, can people who do mean things become good people?" The question caught Darius by surprise, not just for its depth, but for how it applied beyond Elena to the larger mission he'd undertaken with the Thompson Kindness Initiative. He thought carefully before answering. "Yes, Malcolm. People can change and become better than they were before. Sometimes they just need a chance to learn and grow." Malcolm nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. As he drifted off to sleep clutching Brownie, Darius remained seated on the edge of the bed, contemplating his son's question and all its implications. 3 days after Malcolm's question about whether mean people could become good people, Darius Thompson found himself still reflecting on it. The depth of his 4-year-old son's inquiry revealed how deeply the theater incident had affected him, but also how much healing had begun. Darius sat in his office at Premier Palace headquarters, reviewing the draft of a Los Angeles Times article about the Thompson Kindness Initiative. Sarah Chen stood nearby, waiting for his feedback. "They did a good job," Darius commented, handing the draft back to Sarah. "The focus is on the initiative itself, not on the personal incident that inspired it." The reporter was very thorough, Sarah agreed. They visited 3 different theaters to see staff training in action. The article, scheduled for Sunday's edition, described the comprehensive anti-bullying campaign being implemented across all 67 Premier Palace locations. It included thoughtful quotes from Darius about creating safe spaces for families and briefly mentioned the incident that sparked the initiative without naming Elena or Steve. "What about these other interview requests?" Darius asked, gesturing to a folder on his desk. Sarah opened the folder. "Good Morning America is particularly interested. Their producer called twice yesterday. They want to feature the initiative as part of their Positive Change segment next week." Darius sighed. "You know how I feel about publicity, Sarah." "I do," she acknowledged. "But this initiative deserves attention. It could inspire other businesses to implement similar programs." After a moment of consideration, Darius nodded. "Set up the Good Morning America interview. But I have conditions. No questions about my personal wealth or business history. The focus stays on the initiative." "What about bringing the boys?" Sarah asked. "The producer mentioned they'd love to meet your sons. I'll ask them if they want to participate. It's their choice." That evening at the Thompson home, Darius gathered his sons in the family room. They sat on the large, sectional sofa, still in their school uniforms. "I have something important to ask you boys," Darius began. "There's a TV show called Good Morning America that wants to talk about our kindness initiative. They'd like all of us to be on the show. What do you think about that?" "We'll be on TV?" Marcus asked excitedly. "Like the superheroes in the movies?" Michael added. Darius smiled. "Not exactly like superheroes. We'd just be talking about being kind to others and how important that is." Matthew adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. "Will a lot of people watch us?" "Yes, many people across the country might see it," Darius explained honestly. Malcolm, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "Will you be with us, Daddy?" "I'll be right beside you the whole time," Darius assured him. "And you don't have to speak if you don't want to. You can just sit with me." The quadruplets exchanged glances, then nodded in unison. Even Malcolm, the most hesitant, seemed willing to try. The following Sunday, the Los Angeles Times published their feature on the Thompson Kindness Initiative. The article appeared on the front page of the lifestyle section with photos of staff training sessions and the new bully-free zone signs being installed in theaters. By Monday morning, the story had gone viral online. Other media outlets picked it up and social media buzzed with positive responses. Parents shared their own stories of bullying incidents in public spaces, praising the initiative for addressing a common problem. At Sunshine House, Elena Morales saw the coverage on the break room television while eating lunch. The news segment showed Darius speaking with reporters outside a Premier Palace location. "Theater visits should be joyful experiences for families," Darius said on screen. "Our goal is to create environments where everyone feels welcome and respected." Barbara Wilson entered the break room as the segment ended. "Your former adversary is doing remarkable work," she commented, sitting across from Elena. "He's not my adversary," Elena corrected gently. "He's someone who taught me an important lesson about kindness and accountability." "The partnership between Sunshine House and Premier Palace has been wonderful for our children," Barbara noted. "The special screening last week meant so much to them." Elena nodded, thinking about how much had changed in just a month. "Has there been any word on the expanded arts program we proposed?" "Actually, yes. Sarah Chen called this morning. They've approved funding for the full year," Barbara replied with a smile. "And she mentioned they'll be appearing on Good Morning America tomorrow. You might want to watch." Across town in his apartment, Steve Johnson also saw the news coverage about the Thompson Kindness Initiative. Unlike the positive reactions from most viewers, Steve felt a surge of anger as he watched Darius speak about creating bully-free environments. "What a hypocrite," Steve muttered, turning off the television. He paced his living room, seething with resentment. The incident had cost him more than just access to Premier Palace theaters. Elena had broken up with him, and his reputation had suffered at work after he missed meetings for his mandatory volunteer hours at Sunshine House. After a few minutes of angry contemplation, Steve grabbed his phone and dialed a number. The Daily Scoop, answered a female voice. Jessica Martinez speaking. "I have a story you might be interested in," Steve said. "About billionaire Darius Thompson and his so-called kindness initiative. There's a lot the public doesn't know." "I'm listening," Jessica replied, her interest clearly piqued. "The whole campaign is based on a personal vendetta against me and my ex-girlfriend. He banned us from all his theaters and forced us into humiliating community service because we confronted his spoiled kid about making a mess," Steve claimed. "He's using his power to bully ordinary people while pretending to be anti-bullying." "That's quite an allegation," Jessica noted. "Would you be willing to go on record with this story? We pay for exclusive content." "Absolutely," Steve replied eagerly. "How much are we talking about?" The next morning, the Thompson family arrived at the Good Morning America studio in downtown Los Angeles. The quadruplets wore matching navy blue suits with different colored ties, red for Marcus, blue for Michael, green for Matthew, and yellow for Malcolm. Darius wore a simple charcoal suit with no tie. "Remember, boys?" Darius said as they waited backstage. "Just be yourselves. You don't have to speak if you don't want to." The host, a friendly woman named Angela Carter, greeted them warmly. "Thank you all for coming today." The boys look absolutely adorable. During the interview, Angela asked Darius about the initiative while the quadruplets sat quietly beside him. Malcolm held Brownie the bear on his lap, occasionally whispering to the stuffed animal. "What inspired you to create this program, Mr. Thompson?" Angela asked. "Every child deserves to feel safe and respected in public spaces," Darius replied. "The Thompson Kindness Initiative is about creating environments where bullying simply isn't tolerated." Angela turned slightly to address the boys. "And what do you boys think about your dad's important work?" Marcus and Michael eagerly shared their thoughts about being kind to others, while Matthew added that his teacher had talked about the initiative at school. Malcolm remained silent, listening carefully. "Malcolm, would you like to add anything?" Angela asked gently. Everyone expected Malcolm to shake his head or whisper to his father. Instead, to everyone's surprise, he looked directly at the camera. "It feels really scary," he said quietly, "but my dad helped make it better." A hush fell over the studio at the simple honesty in his voice. Angela leaned forward with genuine interest. "What feels scary, Malcolm?" she asked softly. "When people are mean to you," Malcolm explained. "It makes you feel small." His brothers nodded in agreement. Darius placed a protective hand on Malcolm's shoulder, deeply moved by his son's courage. Angela smiled warmly. "Your dad's helping lots of people feel less scared, isn't he?" Malcolm nodded. "Everyone should be kind. That's what Mommy always said." The unexpected mention of Jennifer Thompson brought tears to Darius's eyes. He hadn't coached Malcolm to say this. It came straight from the child's heart. After the segment aired, social media exploded with supportive messages. Parents shared similar stories and praised Malcolm's bravery. The Thompson Kindness Initiative gained national attention overnight. At Premier Palace headquarters, Sarah's phone rang non-stop with new partnership requests and additional media inquiries. In the midst of this positive response, an email arrived from Jessica Martinez at the Daily Scoop. "Mr. Thompson," the email began, "we've been approached by Steve Johnson with allegations about the origins of your kindness initiative. Before proceeding with publication, we're offering you the opportunity to comment. Mr. Johnson claims the initiative is based on a personal vendetta against him and Elena Morales." Sarah immediately called Darius, who was still at the television studio with his sons. "We have a potential problem," Sarah explained. "Steve Johnson is trying to sell his version of the story to a tabloid." Darius listened calmly as Sarah read the email. "Forward it to me," he said. "I'll handle this personally." Rather than responding with anger, Darius crafted a surprising reply. He invited Jessica Martinez to visit a Thompson Kindness Initiative training session and Sunshine House to see the work firsthand. He also extended an olive branch to Steve, offering him a chance to participate constructively rather than undermine the initiative. "Tell Ms. Martinez I have nothing to hide," Darius told Sarah over the phone. "The initiative speaks for itself through its actions, not its origins." "What about Steve?" Sarah asked. "Do you really think he'll accept your offer?" "Probably not," Darius admitted. "But this isn't about Steve anymore. It's about showing that transformation is possible, just like Malcolm asked me." As the Thompson family left the studio, Malcolm reached for his father's hand. "Did I do okay on TV, Daddy?" Darius knelt to his son's level. "You did better than okay, Malcolm. You were brave and honest. I'm very proud of you." Malcolm smiled, the fear that had clouded his eyes for weeks noticeably diminished. "I wasn't scared to talk about it this time." "That's because you're healing," Darius said gently, "and your words today will help many other children feel brave too." The day after the Good Morning America appearance, Darius received a call from Jessica Martinez of the Daily Scoop. The tabloid journalist had accepted his invitation to visit both a staff training session and Sunshine House. "I appreciate you taking the time to show me the initiative in action, Mr. Thompson," Jessica said as they walked through the Los Angeles flagship theater. She wore a simple black blazer and carried a notebook, jotting down observations as they moved through the building. "I believe in transparency," Darius replied. "You can't understand the impact of this program without seeing it firsthand." They observed as staff members participated in training exercises about conflict resolution. The employees worked through different scenarios, practicing how to protect vulnerable patrons and diffuse tense situations. "What strikes me is how engaged your staff seems," Jessica noted. "This doesn't feel like mandatory corporate training." "Because it isn't just about policy," Darius explained. "It's about creating a culture where everyone feels responsible for maintaining a safe environment." Later, at Sunshine House, Jessica watched Elena Morales lead a group of children in a workshop about friendship. The children sat in a circle on colorful cushions, taking turns sharing stories about times when they felt included or excluded. "Sometimes people are mean because they don't know better," Elena was explaining gently, "but we can always choose kindness, even when others don't." Jessica raised an eyebrow, clearly connecting this message to the information Steve had shared about Elena's past behavior. After the workshop ended, Jessica approached Elena. "You seem very committed to this work. It's quite different from what Steve Johnson described." Elena nodded. "Steve's still angry. I understand that. But this experience changed me in ways I never expected." "Would you be willing to talk about what happened at the theater that day?" Jessica asked. "From your perspective?" Elena looked thoughtful. "Only if it helps others understand that people can change and grow from their mistakes." The following week, the Daily Scoop published a feature article with the headline, "Beyond Revenge: How a Billionaire's Response to Bullying Created Real Change." Rather than the scandal piece Steve had hoped for, Jessica Martinez had written a thoughtful exploration of transformation and accountability. The article opened with Steve's allegations but quickly shifted to observations from Jessica's visits. She described the comprehensive staff training, the partnership with Sunshine House, and the visible impact on children from both programs. Most surprisingly, she included Elena's candid admission about her behavior at the theater. "I was wrong that day," Elena was quoted saying. "I humiliated a child over spilled popcorn and then tried to justify it. Mr. Thompson could have publicly shamed us or pursued legal action. Instead, he created an opportunity for growth, not just for me, but for thousands of others through this initiative." The article concluded with a powerful statement. "In an era when public conflicts often end in mutual destruction, the Thompson Kindness Initiative offers a different model, one where accountability leads not to punishment, but to transformation." When Steve saw the published article, he threw his copy of the tabloid across his apartment in rage. The piece had painted him as petty and vindictive, while portraying Elena and Darius as examples of genuine change and visionary leadership. "This is ridiculous!" he shouted to his empty living room. "That reporter completely fell for Thompson's act." Steve's phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah Chen. "Mr. Thompson's offer to participate constructively in the initiative remains open. Please contact this office if you'd like to discuss possibilities." Steve deleted the message without responding. At Sunshine House, Elena read the article during her lunch break. Barbara Wilson joined her carrying 2 cups of coffee. "That's quite a favorable piece," Barbara commented, sitting across from Elena. "Are you comfortable with how much of your story was included?" Elena nodded. "Jessica was fair. She didn't hide my mistakes, but she showed how people can change. That's important for the children here to understand too." "Speaking of which," Barbara said, "the bullying prevention workshop you developed has been requested by 3 other children's organizations. They want you to train their staff." Elena looked surprised. "Really? I'm not an expert." "Your perspective is valuable precisely because you've experienced both sides," Barbara explained. "You understand the bully and the bullied." Over the following months, Elena's workshop evolved into a comprehensive program. She incorporated lessons from child psychologists, including Dr. Wright, along with her own experiences. The program taught children to identify bullying behavior, support peers who were being targeted, and understand the underlying causes of mean behavior. 4 months after the incident that started it all, the Thompson Kindness Initiative had been fully implemented across all 67 Premier Palace locations nationwide. Theaters displayed bully-free zone designations, staff had completed specialized training, and community programs offered regular workshops for families. Malcolm Thompson had made remarkable progress during this time. With Dr. Wright's guidance and his family's support, he had gradually overcome his fear of public places. He no longer saw the world as filled with potential mean people waiting to humiliate him. On a busy Saturday afternoon, the Thompson family visited the Century City Premier Palace for a new animated movie. The theater was crowded with families, and the concession line stretched nearly to the door. "Can we get caramel popcorn, Daddy?" Marcus asked excitedly. "And chocolate candy?" added Michael. Darius smiled. "Yes to popcorn, yes to 1 candy each. Malcolm, what would you like?" Malcolm looked at the colorful concession menu. "I want blue raspberry slushy, please." As they waited in line, Malcolm stood between his brothers, no longer clinging to his father's hand. He laughed at Matthew's joke, seeming completely comfortable despite the crowd. When they finally reached the front of the line, Malcolm turned quickly to point at the slushy machine and accidentally bumped into a young girl behind him. The girl, about his age with curly hair and a pink dress, stumbled slightly. Darius started to reach for Malcolm, ready to help him navigate this potentially triggering situation. But before he could intervene, Malcolm turned to the girl. "I'm sorry I bumped you," he said clearly. "It was an accident." The girl smiled. "It's okay. I bump into people all the time." Both children giggled, and Malcolm returned to selecting his slushy flavor. Darius watched with pride as his son handled the situation with newfound confidence. The exact scenario that had once been his greatest fear was now just a normal childhood moment. After the movie, as they walked through the lobby, Malcolm noticed a large new plaque on the wall. It featured the Thompson Kindness Initiative logo and the words, "Everyone deserves respect." "Look, Daddy, that has our name on it," Malcolm pointed. "Yes, it does," Darius confirmed. "All the theaters have them now." "So everyone will remember to be kind?" Malcolm asked. "That's the hope, buddy," Darius replied, ruffling his son's hair. Later that week, Sarah Chen presented Darius with community feedback showing overwhelmingly positive responses to the initiative. Theaters reported fewer incidents of disruptive behavior, and staff morale had improved significantly. "We've accomplished a lot in 4 months," Sarah noted, "but I think we should do something special to mark the initiative's success." "What did you have in mind?" Darius asked. "A grand reopening celebration for the flagship Premier Palace downtown," Sarah suggested. We've completed all the renovations, including the new sensory-friendly screening room and the community meeting space. Darius nodded thoughtfully. I like that idea. Make it a community event, not just a corporate celebration. Invite families from Sunshine House. And the quadruplets as guests of honor? Sarah added with a smile. If they want to participate, Darius agreed. It's always their choice. That evening, Darius discussed the grand reopening with his sons during dinner. There's going to be a special celebration at the big theater downtown, he explained. Would you boys like to help cut the ribbon at the ceremony? Will there be cameras? Matthew asked cautiously. Yes, there will be some press there, Darius answered honestly. I want to do it, Malcolm said, surprising everyone. I'm not scared anymore. His brothers looked at him with wide eyes. Are you sure, Malcolm? Marcus asked. There will be lots of people. Malcolm nodded confidently. I'm sure. Dr. Lisa says it's good to do things that used to scare you when you're ready. Darius felt a surge of emotion as he looked at his son, the same child who just 4 months ago had been too frightened to go to the park. The transformation wasn't just in the theaters or the staff or the programs, it was in Malcolm himself. As the boys chattered excitedly about what they would wear to the ceremony, Darius made a mental note to add one more element to the grand reopening, a small memorial plaque dedicated to Jennifer. Her presence had been missing from the initiative, but her values of kindness and respect had shaped it from the beginning. The Thompson Kindness Initiative had started as a response to one painful incident, but it had grown into something much larger, a living legacy that honored Jennifer's memory and taught their sons that even difficult experiences could lead to positive change. 6 months after the popcorn incident that changed so many lives, downtown Los Angeles buzzed with excitement. Workers placed the final touches on the renovated Premier Palace flagship theater. The historic building's facade gleamed in the morning sunlight, its classic marquee now complemented by modern digital displays announcing the grand reopening. Inside, Darius Thompson walked through the lobby inspecting every detail. The renovation included not just visual improvements but thoughtful additions that promoted inclusivity and kindness. Special seating accommodated children with sensory needs, and staff received enhanced training on assisting patrons of all abilities. Everything looks perfect, Mr. Thompson, said Karen Lewis, the regional manager. The contractors finished the accessible walkways last night. And the special plaque? Darius asked. Installed this morning in the main lobby, exactly as you requested, Karen confirmed. Darius nodded, his expression a mixture of pride and emotion. Thank you, Karen. For everything. Outside, 3 yellow school buses pulled up to the curb. Children from Sunshine House poured out, their excited voices filling the morning air. Barbara Wilson and Elena Morales guided them toward the theater entrance, where they would enter as VIP guests for the ceremony. Remember to stay with your buddy, Elena reminded them, helping little Zoe down the bus steps. Will we really get to see a movie in the fancy theater? Zoe asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Yes, and there's a special reception with cookies and juice before the movie, Elena promised. But first, there's an important ceremony. Barbara approached Elena as the children lined up. The media is already setting up inside. Are you ready for this? Elena nodded. 6 months ago, I would have been worried about being recognized as that mean woman from the theater. Today, I'm just grateful to be part of something positive. At the Thompson home, Ms. Jenkins helped the quadruplets prepare for their big moment. The boys wore matching black suits, each with a differently colored tie. Red for Marcus, blue for Michael, green for Matthew, and yellow for Malcolm. Stand still, Malcolm, Ms. Jenkins said gently, straightening his yellow tie. There, perfect. Malcolm examined himself in the mirror. I look like Daddy. Yes, you do, Ms. Jenkins agreed. Very handsome and grown up. Darius entered the room dressed in a similar suit. Are my boys ready for their big moment? Yes, they chorused together. Malcolm picked out his yellow tie himself. Ms. Jenkins informed Darius. He said it's the color of happiness. Darius knelt to Malcolm's level. You look wonderful, son. How are you feeling about today? Malcolm smiled confidently, happy and a little nervous, but Dr. Lisa says that's normal. She's right, Darius agreed. Even I get nervous sometimes. But we'll be together, Malcolm said. That makes it easier. By 11 o'clock in the morning, the area outside the theater was filled with people. Local news crews set up cameras to capture the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Families who had won special tickets through radio contests waited excitedly. Community leaders and business partners mingled near the entrance. The Sunshine House children were escorted to a special viewing area near the front. Zoe spotted Malcolm when the Thompson family arrived and waved enthusiastically. "That's my friend," she told Elena proudly, "from Dr. Lisa's special group." Elena smiled, watching as Malcolm waved back without hesitation. The transformation in the boy, who had once trembled at the thought of public places, was remarkable. When the Thompsons approached the entrance, Elena felt a moment of nervousness. Though she had seen Darius several times through the Sunshine House partnership, this was different. A public celebration of everything that had grown from their difficult first encounter. "Good morning, Ms. Morales," Darius greeted her politely. "Thank you for bringing the Sunshine House children today." "They're thrilled to be here," Elena replied, "especially Zoe. She and Malcolm have become pen pals through Dr. Wright's friendship program." Malcolm tugged at his father's sleeve. "Can I go say hi to Zoe before the ceremony?" "Of course," Darius agreed, watching with pride as Malcolm confidently walked over to greet his friend. Sarah Chen approached, clipboard in hand. "We're ready to begin whenever you are, Mr. Thompson." Darius nodded, gathering his sons near the large red ribbon stretched across the theater entrance. The crowd quieted as the ceremony began. "Good morning, everyone," Darius began, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. 6 months ago, the Thompson Kindness Initiative was just an idea. Today, it's a reality in all 67 Premier Palace locations across the country. He gestured to the renovated building behind him. This flagship location represents everything we believe in, not just entertainment, but a space where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. The audience applauded as Darius continued. "The renovations you'll see today include physical improvements, but more importantly, they represent a commitment to creating safe, inclusive environments for all families." Darius turned to his sons. "This initiative wouldn't exist without my 4 boys who remind me every day what truly matters in life." He knelt down beside Malcolm. "My son Malcolm taught me that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about facing your fears and growing stronger. Malcolm, would you like to help cut the ribbon?" Malcolm nodded solemnly, stepping forward with his brothers. Sarah handed Darius a large pair of ceremonial scissors, which he held together with Malcolm, while his other sons gripped the handles too. "This is a place where everyone is treated with kindness and respect," Darius announced to the crowd. "And it took the courage of my son Malcolm to show us how important that really is." Together, they cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause as the doors to the newly renovated theater opened. Inside the grand lobby, guests marveled at the beautiful space. Children from Sunshine House pointed excitedly at the refreshment area where special treats awaited them. Local officials congratulated Darius on creating a community resource, not just an entertainment venue. Near the center of the lobby, people gathered around a small bronze plaque mounted on a marble stand. It read simply, "Kindness is the true measure of greatness," in memory of Jennifer Thompson. Dr. Lisa Wright approached Darius as he stood looking at the plaque. "She would be very proud today," she said quietly. "I hope so," Darius replied. "Everything we've built here carries her values. Especially in your sons," Dr. Wright added. "Malcolm's progress has been extraordinary. He's not defined by that incident anymore." Across the lobby, Malcolm was giving Zoe a tour of his favorite parts of the theater. He showed her the special seats for children who needed extra space, the quiet room for those who might feel overwhelmed, and the wall of artwork created by children from Sunshine House. "My drawing is there!" Zoe exclaimed, pointing to her artwork displayed prominently. "Mine too," Malcolm said proudly, "from when we did the kindness project together." Elena watched them from a distance, moved by the friendship that had formed between these two children who had experienced different kinds of vulnerability. When she felt someone approach, she turned to find Darius standing beside her. "Thank you for coming today," he said. "Your work with the children has been an important part of this initiative's success." "Thank you for the opportunity," Elena replied sincerely. "When I wrote that letter asking to apologize to Malcolm, I never imagined all of this would grow from it." "Neither did I," Darius admitted. "But that's how transformation works. It starts with one small step toward making things right." The special screenings began shortly after, with movies selected for children of different ages and sensory needs. Families filled the theaters, experiencing the inclusive features that made the space welcoming to all. As the celebration continued around him, Darius found himself drawn back to Jennifer's memorial plaque. He stood before it quietly, thinking of how much had changed in 6 months. Malcolm had overcome his fear and found his voice. The other boys had learned valuable lessons about standing up for each other and for others who might be vulnerable. The Thompson Kindness Initiative had created positive change in communities nationwide. And perhaps most surprisingly, people like Elena had discovered new purpose through the experience. "They're going to be okay, Jen," Darius whispered to the plaque. "Better than okay." He felt a small hand slip into his and looked down to see Malcolm standing beside him. "Is that for Mommy?" Malcolm asked, pointing to the plaque. "Yes, it is," Darius confirmed. "So everyone who comes here will remember what she taught us about kindness." Malcolm studied the words carefully. "I remember Mommy was always kind, even when she was very sick." "That's right," Darius said, his voice thick with emotion. "And that's why this place is special. It helps her kindness continue, even though she's not here with us." Malcolm nodded, seeming to understand. She would like seeing all the happy children here. Yes, she would, Darius agreed. As they returned to the celebration, Darius watched his sons interacting confidently with other children. What had begun as a painful incident had transformed into something meaningful and lasting, not just for the Thompson family, but for countless others who would experience the ripple effects of kindness for years to come. The legacy they had built together would continue to transform lives long after today's celebration ended. And that, Darius knew, was the greatest tribute he could offer to Jennifer's memory, a world where their sons and children everywhere could grow up understanding that kindness truly was the measure of greatness. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.